Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. It can be caused by prolonged stress, most often in work or caregiving roles. So we'll most often see these in line of like nurses, social workers, caregiving roles, like if we're taking care of a loved one who may be battling some type of long-term, maybe like illness, um, maybe even like that parenting role. I mean, parents, we are in that lifelong role of caregiving for our children, right? Um, it differs from regular stress because it is persistent, it is draining, and it often accompanied by feelings of hopelessness or detachment. So oftentimes, when we're starting to feel that burnout, we might dread going into work. We might dread getting up in the morning. We might lay in the bed and be like, oh my goodness, it's another day. I really don't want to go into work today. You might sit there and contemplate on, should I call in? I'm really not feeling that great today. I should probably call in. Do I have enough PTO to cover the today? You might start feeling detached from your clients, from your patients, or even your loved ones that you might be taking care of. Some of those components of burnout is emotional exhaustion, just feeling depleted, feeling drained, or unable to cope with your own emotions. Might start feeling depersonalization, cynicism, becoming detached, very irritable or indifferent toward your work, toward your clients, or even those relationships. So this could be like your personal relationships, your marriage, your children, your friends, so you might start engaging in a lot of isolation. You might start having reduced senses of accomplishment, feeling ineffective, feeling unproductive, or that one's work has little meaning or even impact. So you might start questioning, your work that you're doing with your clients, the work that you're doing. Am I even doing a good job? Is the work that I'm doing with clients, am I even doing anything to help these people? Do I even need to go to work tomorrow? Like, what am I doing to help this person? So you might start going into this kind of cycle of questioning yourself, questioning your abilities. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that we can look for in ourselves that we might be going into some burnout? There are definitely some physical symptoms. You might start experiencing fatigue. So maybe headaches, sleep disturbances, maybe frequent illnesses, just not feeling like yourself. Some emotional, maybe some irritability, hopelessness, apathy, anxiety, depression, some behavioral, maybe with some withdrawal, procrastination, maybe noticing that some of those notes are like really piling up, and maybe you're not a person that lets your notes, your documentation pile up. So taking a look back on, am I experiencing some burnout? Why am I procrastinating? Increased use of substances to numb those activities. Some other things that you can look out for: am I doom scrolling? Am I overeating? So checking in on some of these behavioral responses. So what are some things that can cause us to experience some burnout? Maybe our workload has increased, and especially in the mental health field. I can only talk about this from my experience. We have this, word called productivity. I don't know if this is in other fields such as nursing, but productivity, like we we despise, I won't say hate, but we despise this word productivity. Like it's a necessity in our career field, but our workload is based on our productivity and the hours that we produce week to week to week. But that can cause a lot of burnout because we are just burning the candle at both ends. And, sometimes that productivity can really cause a lot of burnout. Um, that control, like we can't control whether or not our clients are, coming into our sessions and are we meeting our productivity from week to week. We can't control, like today, for instance, in Anchorage, like we had a lot of ice accumulate. So our schools were canceled. Well, that's obviously going to affect whether or not our clients come into the office, because if their kids are not in school, maybe they don't have childcare. So that's going to possibly negatively affect our productivity for the day. That is outside of our locus of control. So we have no control over that. Other things that we don't have control over is we don't have control over management. We don't have control over leadership. So that micromanagement piece, we don't have control over if there's unclear roles within our organization. So thinking about the things that we have control over and the things that are outside of our control. The reward and recognition, the lack of appreciation or the lack of fairness within our organization can cause some burnout as well. Community, is there conflict? Is there lack of support within our community? The values mismatch, working in environments that don't align with our own values. Personal factors, perfectionism. Like if we strive for perfectionism and that is not within our roles within our organization, like if we're striving for perfectionism and that doesn't align, like that can cause a lot of burnout as well. If we are individuals who strive for people pleasing, that can cause a lot of burnout. Or if we have poor boundaries, that can cause a lot of burnout as well. So thinking about, if we're experiencing burnout, kind of, doing some reflective in what could possibly be causing my burnout. So what are some of the differences between stress and burnout? Stress often involves too many demands, and too much pressure. Burnout, often feels like there's not enough energy, not enough motivation, or not enough meaning left. Meaning that we just don't have enough of ourselves left to give. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the YouTube video or the TikTok video of not enough spoons, but my kids love that analogy. We wake up with so many spoons, and we give so many spoons throughout our day. And then how many spoons are we left with at the end of the day for ourselves? Well, if we're giving too many spoons away, we don't have enough spoons left for ourselves. And so that's maybe when we're experiencing burnout. And obviously, when we're experiencing burnout, there are consequences of burnout, just like there are consequences of stress, there's consequences of burnout, can impact our mental health. There's higher risk for depression, there's higher risk for anxiety. It can impact our physical health. It can cause sleep problems, cardiovascular issues, weakened immune systems, workplace and our relationships. In the workplace, it can reduce our productivity. It can increase compassion fatigue, can increase conflict and withdrawal. The good thing is that there are ways that we can cope, and there are ways that we can prevent burnout. So there's individual strategies. We can build strong boundaries, saying no and setting limits for ourselves. Prioritize rest and recovery, engaging in sleep hygiene, downtime, taking breaks, which I know that, that could be a struggle, especially, if we have really busy days at work. But those breaks, they don't have to be long breaks. It can be simply, what, I am going to strive to end my sessions at that 53-minute mark. If that is, if you have a policy at work that you need to see clients for 53 minutes in order for them to be available session, I am going to see my clients for 53 minutes so that I can have 7 minutes between each client so that I can sit and breathe and I can take a bathroom break and I can get a water or a coffee or whatever. But that 7 minutes can be the greatest amount of time in between clients that you can have for your day. You're going to set aside time to take, a lunch break, even if it's 15 minutes to take yourself time to give yourself time to get yourself something to eat, but setting aside time to take breaks. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir to you guys. If you're in any type of mental health field or nursing field or any type of demanding field, that yes, I can sit here all day and preach these things because I also need to listen to my own advice because I don't take this advice either, but I get it. Engage in restorative activities, exercise, hobbies, mindfulness, time in nature. For those of you guys that live in Alaska, like you guys know how beautiful it is up here. Taking 5 minutes to walk outside, like just engaging in nature can be so restorative up here. Foster supportive relationships. Having a coworker that you can go take a 5-minute walk with, having someone at work that you can go and shut the door and vent to can be so restorative, or just having a coworker that you can go and sit and eat lunch with and talk about, things outside of work that can be so restorative. But finding time throughout your workday to take a break can be so restorative. Also finding these activities to engage in after work with your loved ones or with a friend can be restorative as well. Trying to reconnect with your values and finding meaning and getting that work-life balance are definitely some individual strategies to try to engage in trying to develop those healthy routines. Some organizational strategies is trying to manage your workload and expectations of your organization while also trying to manage your individual expectations. So, we were talking about that perfectionism, excuse me, trying to manage and balance those. Encourage autonomy, involvement in decision making. Try not to be that lone wolf and trying to make decisions all on your own, but trying to have that team concept. If your organization doesn't have group supervision or a place that your team comes together, develop that for yourselves. It's really awesome to have that team cohesion, a place where your team can come together and talk and discuss team concepts. I know that is really something healthy that we have here at the Cohen Clinic, and it's so beneficial for all of us to be able to come together and to talk and discuss organizational things together as a team. Provide recognition and fair treatment. It doesn't have to be recognizing each other for all the great clinical things that your guys are doing, but we try to recognize our team for the silly things that we do. It's awesome, outside of the work stuff. At one time we had a star program. We bought stars and everyone put, comments about each clinician that they liked about each other, and we stuck it on their doors. That was a really great thing that our case manager started. And I think it just, it really helped the team come together and and we recognized each individual person for like what we kind of liked about that clinician or that team member. But just finding time to recognize each other. It doesn't have to be something that's organized, be something that one person thinks about, but just being able to recognize each other, create a supportive and connected environment. And I think, that's what it's all about. It doesn't have to be something that's organized by the organization. Come together as a team and think about how can we recognize each other in the work that we're doing. All right. So we talked a lot about burnout. And maybe you guys recognize some things about burnout within yourself, and hopefully you thought about some strategies that you could engage in to help with the burnout, and maybe you felt it in the past, and maybe you felt lost in it, and hopefully now you know that it's not something that's uncommon. Burnout is very common, especially in the high-paced environments that we all work in. But there are definitely ways to overcome it. There's definitely ways to recognize it early on, and you don't have to go at it alone. So now we're going to talk about compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is an emotional and physical exhaustion that can occur when someone cares for others who are suffering. So this is it can be in the mental health field, this can be in the nursing field, this can be those caregivers that are taking care of others who may be dealing with a long-term illness. Sometimes called cost of caring, it is common among helpers, therapists, nurses, teachers, caregivers, first responders, social workers, parents, closely related to burnout and secondary traumatic stress, but focuses specifically on emotional toll of empathizing with others. So what are some of these signs and symptoms? And these are going to sound very familiar and not very different from burnout. But emotionally, feeling numb, detached, or hopeless, feeling irritable, feeling anxious, sad, maybe feeling some guilt, and having difficulty feeling empathy. Some of the cognitive symptoms: difficulty concentrating, having negative thoughts or cynicism, maybe having some intrusive images or thoughts. And those could be related to others' traumas. Some of those physical symptoms could be fatigue or exhaustion, trouble sleeping, headaches, or stomach issues. And some of the behavioral responses or symptoms could be withdrawal or avoidance, reduced productivity, and increased substance use or unhealthy coping. So a lot of those sound very familiar to the burnout symptoms. A lot of some of the differences are, having the intrusive images about the some of the related traumas that the person is going through, or not being able to have that empathy. Compassion fatigue versus burnout. Burnout is exhaustion caused by chronic workplace stress, overload, lack of control, and lack of recognition. Where compassion fatigue is exhaustion specifically from caring for and empathizing with others' suffering. They often overlap, but compassion fatigue can appear more suddenly after exposure to others' trauma. So some of the risk factors of compassion fatigue is there's high exposure to trauma or suffering. There may be heavy caseload or caregiving responsibilities, lack of support or supervision, a history of personal trauma, and perfectionism, people pleasing, or weak boundaries. And so usually compassion fatigue, like if we're working in working with others in our jobs, and then we have to go home and take care of our family. It's usually happening really, really quickly because we're working with individuals at work and we're having to be very empathetic to their needs. And then we're having to go home and be very empathetic to our family's needs. So giving a lot of empathy to everyone else's needs who's being empathetic to our needs. So when we're showing a lot of empathy, and we're not receiving a lot of empathy for what we need, we're not getting a lot of support. And so it happens really, really quickly. And so there may not be any warning signs that we're going into that compassion fatigue. So a lot of the early warning signs might be coming from that burnout. We might be feeling the burnout first before we go into this compassion fatigue. So they really might go hand in hand. We start to feel that burnout, and then the compassion fatigue is very, very quickly onset. So being really, really aware of both of these, then it might quickly happen. We might feel that burnout first. And if we don't catch that burnout, then we could quickly go into that compassion fatigue because we are just burning ourselves out. And then if we don't catch it and we're being very empathetic to our clients, we're going home, we're being very empathetic to our families, and we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're burning out, and our compassion fatigue is going to hit us all at once. And it's going to be disastrous, not only for ourselves, but also for our families. So there are some consequences. Reduced quality of care provided to others. We're going to strain those relationships. We can't be empathetic to our families, or if we can't go home and be caring and be loving, what is that going to look like? Declining physical and mental health, increased risk for depression, anxiety, or PTSD-like symptoms. So some of that may be like that vicarious PTSD, if we're, working with individuals who have PTSD and we get some of the vicarious PTSD-like symptoms. So there are ways that we can prevent and cope with our compassion fatigue. Self-awareness, creating really healthy boundaries, engaging in self-care, utilizing our grounding and mindfulness, and debriefing. The debriefing portion, might be difficult if you're talking about a caregiver who maybe is taking care of a loved one, maybe who doesn't work outside the home. So being able to have a trusted person in their life that they can go talk to. So they might have to get creative. It might be talking to, a pastor. It might be talking to a friend. It might be finding someone out in the community that they can talk to. Being self-aware is noticing early warning signs of fatigue, noticing when they are getting burnt out. So being aware of like those burnout symptoms, practicing and saying no, setting limits on, when they're available, which can be difficult for caregivers who are working in the home or who are having to take care of a spouse or a partner. When can they take a break? So having palliative care or having an alternate person who can come in and give them those healthy breaks, which also can be difficult to find. Self-care, prioritizing rest, exercise, hobbies, social connection, managing stress by engaging in grounding and mindfulness. If the individual is part of an organization, once again, balancing that workload, rotating the high trauma roles. So like in mental health, making sure that there's a really healthy balance of, the clients. So not giving one therapist all the high risk clients and burning them out on the high risk clients, and making sure that there's a healthy balance of high risk versus low risk clients. And making sure that the individuals are getting regular supervision and team support. And this can look different in every organization, because if you have someone that's, in private practice, this can be difficult getting that supervision. Training in trauma-informed care and self-care, and creating a culture where asking for help is encouraged. And sometimes, there could be a stigma around asking for help, and depending on where you work. So making sure that that is encouraged and that's not frowned upon. All right, just a few reflection prompts, and don't necessarily have to answer these, but just kind of, being reflective. When was the last time that you felt emotionally drained from helping someone? And just kind of think about it. Think about like how you felt. What did you do? Were you aware of it? Did you take care of yourself? What signs did you notice in yourself when you're starting to experience compassion fatigue or burnout? And which kind of coping strategies do you think are realistic for you to put in practice throughout the week? Do you already have a plan in place for when throughout the week that you practice? Are you taking, healthy breaks throughout the day? Are you scheduling time for lunch? Do you intentionally schedule time to go for a walk throughout the day? So when should we seek support? When we're experiencing burnout, if it leads to persistent depression, anxiety, or hopelessness, if functioning at work or at home is significantly impaired, or if maladaptive coping, such as substance use, isolation, or anger, escalates, we should seek support. Remembering that support looks different for everyone. It doesn't mean, have to go to therapy, or it can mean seeking out help through a pastor, a friend, a worker. And when should we seek support for compassion fatigue? When persistent emotional numbness, anxiety, or depression, feeling detached from work, loved ones, or losing that sense of purpose. Or if we're relying on unhealthy coping strategies such as substances or avoidance, if functioning at work and home feels increasingly impaired, we should seek some type of support. How will you engage in self-care this week? And how will you prevent burnout and compassion fatigue? There's a really great training on PESI right now. That's free. It is called, I'll share it with you guys. It's called Compassion Fatigue Prevention for Professionals Who Work with Grief and Trauma. But it's a whole series. It's like 12 hours of CEs, but it covers many different topics. Based on like working with trauma victims, intimate partner violence. So, I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful training on PESI. I don't know if anyone takes those trainings, but it was awesome. But it talks a lot about, burnout, compassion fatigue, and working with individuals who have experienced trauma and intimate partner violence. And
Hey, Lindsay, we do have a couple of questions whenever you are ready to start taking those.
yep, go ahead. I'm at that slide.
Awesome. I know Catherine had came in and raised her hand a little while ago. Catherine, you feel free to either drop that in the chat or I can give you access. Let's see. I know these webinars are a little funky. I'm going to push the allow to talk button. So if you don't want to, go ahead and push mute. Catherine, are you still with us? I want to make sure we answer your question. Well, that's okay. We can circle back around to her if she wants to come back. So Nicole also put in the chat, does burnout and or compassion fatigue get worse during the holiday season? It feels like clients are more needy when they're dealing with some of the stressors around the season, which leaves me feeling more drained.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how, burnout and compassion fatigue can get worse during the holiday season. I mean, we're taking, some individuals take on the role of planning all the things holiday, correct? I mean, I can see it. I think it depends on the clients that we're working with, right? Like if you're talking about like the matriarch of the family, who typically take on planning all the things for holiday, right? So that matriarch is planning the dinner, how everyone's getting there for the holiday, all the presents. So they're taking on everything. That can cause a lot of burnout for that person, but they're also probably experience a lot of compassion fatigue because they're taking on a lot of empathy, or they're carrying a lot of that empathy for everyone in the family, because how is this person going to get along with this person, like they're carrying all the weight of how everything is going to go. So I think it depends on who you're working with, and who you're kind of speaking with. Is that person planning all the things for the holidays, if that makes sense? But yes, people can experience a lot of burnout and a lot of compassion fatigue around the holidays.
Nicole, feel free to add to that if you had any follow-up questions. See, it looks like Carla had asked earlier when you were talking about that resource. Do you happen to have the link to that training?
Oh, the Petsy.com. Yes, I can get it up.
If you can drop it in the chat. If not, if you want to send it to me, I'm happy to send out a follow-up email with that link for people if they want it.
Yeah, let me stop share. And then that way I don't pull up anything crazy on my screen.
No worries.
I'll be doing that.
Let's see, lots of awesome ideas for self-care coming through while you're looking. We've got some spending time with horses. They reground me daily. That's awesome idea that I grew up on a farm, and so that's really exciting to hear that people do that up here. Self-care, getting to weekly yoga class, gives you something to look forward to. That's a great idea. Where I can practice in community, I find super supportive. Awesome. Taking breaks, doing puzzles, reads, walks, all of those things that keep your mind focused on something else, right? Love that. I do my own therapeutic work. The more healing I experience, the more present I am with others, including clients, and the more able I am to not pick up others' wounds and trauma. I love that, Eris. That's such a great idea. I was always kind of told from the get-go of, if I'm dreading my client come in, then I'm not going to be giving them the best service and the best kind of session that they deserve and that they're looking for and they're coming for. So, if I'm not in my right spot, my right mind, my right space, then, I'm not going to be helpful to others. So, finding ways to take care of myself to get me back there to where I can be present. Such a great idea. Taking walks, enjoying watching the eagles. Yes, and with the trees looking a little bare these days, they're so much easier to spot. Especially, if you're in the Anchorage Eagle River area going over by the dump, there are lots of them over there. Awesome ideas. I love how just so simple some of the biggest impactful self-care ideas are. Um, I love to, get up before my kids every day for at least 20 minutes early so I can drink my coffee in peace and just not be needed. I think that's my favorite kind of time of the day is, being a parent or, kind of having other obligations outside of work can be really difficult to balance all of that. And so having that first few minutes of the day where no one needs me. And, I don't have a million tasks that I need to be doing in that very moment. Sometimes it's just really nice and really calming. But yes, Eris, those are such big questions. How is this client bumping up against my own wounds and my own stuff? Doing that kind of check in with yourself is so important. So many layers and not enough coffee. Isn't that the truth? Start my day with hot coffee, switch to cold coffee by the midday. Awesome. Is there any other questions that we can answer, support in? I know Lindsay is working on gathering that link. Also, you will get another email probably tomorrow that comes through Zoom. It automatically sends, and it's going to have a little survey link in there. Just kind of give us some feedback. How was this for you? Was the platform good? If you have any other additional suggestions for topics you'd like to see next year, drop them in there. That's how we continue to grow the program and continue to educate the community. So reach out, let us know. Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay.
Happy holidays, guys.
Oh, Lindsay, Eris said your curls are beautiful. If you didn't see that,
Oh,
awesome. All right. Well, if you have any questions, y'all have my email through the Zoom link, so feel free to reach out through email anytime. Happy to connect with you.
and I
Otherwise,
just posted that in the chat too.
yeah, y'all have a great day. Have a great week and weekend and holiday season. You were awesome, Lindsay. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I will see you in office tomorrow, ma'am.